there's an evil entity in the house.
You are about to see real people
I was terrified beyond belief.
reliving horrifying paranormal encounters for the first time.
I truly felt it was like living in hell.
As spirits return from the dark side to deliver evil messages.
This can't really be happening.
You can't explain the fear.
I've never been that scared in my entire life.
I wanted to get out of that house.
Be prepared to be afraid.
Story 20C, take 5. Marker.
Kansas is not bad. The nice thing about it, it's still a smaller city. I was looking online at all these different houses, and was the right time, good prices, and easy to get mortgages. So, made a move. It was a foreclosure, so that makes it a lot easier to buy a house in decent condition. I actually didn't know a lot about my house before I bought it because it was a foreclosure. So pretty much the online listing said home located in Kalamazoo, great condition, sold as is. Everything was great the first few months of the house. Never had any issues. I met Dave about February 2013. We started talking online.
One day I bothered him enough to meet me, so he did and kind of hit it off. There were some issues in July, and I was actually moving to Kalamazoo, so Dan said one day, you know, "Well, move in with me."
He moved in about September last year.
My first impression of Dan's house was it was a very nice house, you know. It was a good starter home.
The first few days after David moved in, everything was good. We never had any issues with the house. It was just peaceful. The next few months, everything was calm all through holidays. The first experiences we had was right after we had visited my brother for the 4th of July. We had come home and my brother had given us this Bible. Didn't think anything of this Bible. We just had it sitting on an end table at the house.
We got home and we were both tired, so we laid down, and it was probably 12 or 1 o'clock, and I had the TV on still.
Hey, Sarge, we got another one here. Another one left. This guy doesn't have his eye.
Out of nowhere, the door just slowly shuts. I got up and opened the door again. There's nothing there. I laid back down and you could just hear creaking along the bed right next to me. A minute later, I heard something fall in the kitchen. I stayed up all night worrying something would happen.
The next morning, he told me about it, and I was a little skeptical. I hadn't experienced anything in the house. First occurrence, I was home by myself. It was during the day. I just got home from work. I heard in the kitchen the dining room chair slam against the floor. Then I heard running across the kitchen. And the basement door fly open and hit the wall. So I hurry up and walk towards the kitchen area. And I see the basement door moving still because it opened with such force. And I see shoes scattered, like they're just thrown down the kitchen area. My logical side's fighting with me, saying this can't really be happening, but deep down inside, I'm terrified. That was the first occurrence that I had at the house.
When you're dealing with any type of aggravated spirit, they will do whatever they can. Obviously, the more energy that a spirit has, the greater the damage that they can do.
Within a few minutes, David actually came home.
Dan looked very startled. You could just tell that something just happened to Dan that he couldn't explain.
After that happened, the rest of the day, every little sound, you'd be worried that something else was going to happen.
It goes from you being the sole person to experience it to, okay, now it's an event. Now it became real because you're not the only one.
Putting aside the signs that something was potentially amiss in his home, Dan went to work on a renovation project in the basement while David was out.
I was in the basement by myself. I was working on replacing some doors in the house, so I was chiseling out the hinges and cutting out where the door handles go. And as I was working on that, the cat had actually come downstairs and she was by me while I was working. And the cat was looking towards the back of the basement, and then she stops and she starts growling. And then she starts backing up. At that point, she gets right by to where I'm at, and she starts swatting and hissing really loudly. And she's so frantic to get away that she actually does a backflip and flops right on her back and is flailing around, and she runs up the basement stairs.
I actually told Dan that the back corner of the basement behind the entertainment room, it was just like hitting a wall. You'd walk back there and out of nowhere, you just hit this cold spot where your hair would stand on end and you just felt this chill, and you could just tell there was something very unsettling about that space.
So at that point, I go upstairs and I get up there and she's in the living room staring right towards the basement door. At that point, I'm walking towards her and she's just looking right through me or trying to look around me just at the door. And she gets frantic again, starts clawing towards that area, and she just runs right to the bedroom. And she won't come out the rest of the day.
I got home after what happened to Dan in the basement, probably 30 minutes later. You know, I went downstairs and started working on a project that I was working on while Dan went back to his doors, and Kitty, of course, was right next to you. She wouldn't leave you. Well, I turned around and I was staring at Kitty, and she started swatting at the air out of nowhere, you know, just swatting at the air. And Dan walked up to the door and he asked me, you know, what are you doing? And I just let out a rather loud shh. In that corner, 3 seconds later, you could hear a woman in a woman's voice going shh back at me. We both said in sync, you know, did you just hear that?
That was the first occurrence where we were both aware and we both heard at the same time.
We probably didn't go back in the basement for anything other than laundry after that.
After a couple of days with no recurring incidents, Dan and David started to think it must have been their imagination.
We were sitting on the couch and I kept like glancing back at the hallway just because a moment before I saw something.
Dan Engblom and David Powers had been experiencing weird paranormal activity in their home, and it was getting too much for David to bear.
We were sitting on the couch, and I kept, like, glancing back at the hallway just because a moment before I saw something. I said, I think I'm seeing someone in the guest bedroom.
Our days are too precious to lose valuable time waiting for officials to figure out what to do with you. Now they know the shot record isn't lost on your value.
You think that you see it, but then as soon as you go to look at it, it's not there.
Gosh, I'd hate to be stuck like that in your world. You pay for shots, don't you? Once, it's really enough.
Yeah, sure you can. All the experience is going somewhere.
He didn't really acknowledge it. He thought I was crazy.
Yeah, they all say that. Let me back at home. Please, let me show you what we do.
Still skeptical that anything paranormal was happening in his home, Dan was alone one night while David went to the gym.
I was watching a TV show, and that's when a loud bang happened. Out the corner of my eye, I saw shadows from the kitchen area. After that happened, the lights in the kitchen and the living room all dimmed, and then they flickered out. And then they came back on. It felt like my heart dropped at that point. There was a very musty body odor smell that you couldn't really pinpoint where it was coming from. You just smell it, and then it'd be gone. At that point, I just ran out of the house, and I waited until David got home, and we stayed outside for about an hour after he got back. I was terrified.
I did believe Dan. You know, Dan's a very rational person. So when he says, you know, you can't explain something, then I'd have to believe him.
At that point, I knew we needed to contact someone and try and figure out what was going on and get some help.
Terrified that the unexplained events in their home would get worse, Dan and David called in a father-daughter paranormal investigation team.
The intent and the purpose of the pre-investigation is to gather relevant information and to substantiate if what they've told us is accurate and true.
Just pulling up in the drive, you know, I looked at my dad and told him something's off. And then definitely once we walked into the home, there was a very heavy feeling. It felt dark.
Dan, nice to meet you. Dan, thanks for coming, guys. Yeah, it's just over here.
I was very relieved when they first came because it was a step towards something.
Just seeing the video cameras and the tape recorders, all that, it makes it more real.
Well, during the walkthrough, we had them take us to the locations that they had specific issues that they could go back and outline for us.
We deployed all of our recorders. We used K2 meters. We also used an Ovilus.
They used their infrared camera and took pictures throughout the house.
Thermal imaging, our thermal imaging camera, allows us to see in a realm that our eyes aren't able to.
They did use the camera on the cat a few times. They actually picked up a really compelling picture they had of, there's actually a hand on the cat's back as she was looking up. You could see this arm and hand right on her.
And it's like 30 degrees cooler than the cat's temperature. And you can see a hand going along its back.
Having witnessed and collected enough evidence, Alan and Anna left the home to sort through their findings.
Right after that first investigation, we did exchange a few emails back and forth. One of the emails, I was actually getting ready for work, and I was in the bathroom getting ready, and I saw an email come in, and I'm reading this email from them, and as I'm reading it, I hear footsteps down the hallway, I open the door and I walk out of the bathroom, and David's in the bedroom.
David, you won't believe this email I just got.
And I'm telling him about the email that I had just gotten from Alan and Anna. And as I'm doing that,
They actually found
he stops me and he's like, "There's someone behind you." All your hair just stands up on your arms. You just get this primal fear.
He was a very old man with sunken in cheeks, and it's a face you'll never forget.
You know that there's something there.
I've never been that scared in my entire life, especially when it's looking right at you.
The email from Alan and Anna said that they're 100% sure that there is something going on at the house. They had sound recordings and infrared images that confirmed and showed all the evidence. I'm scared I'm gonna have to sell my house.
Due to the findings, we made arrangements to get right back, and I think it was 3 days later we conducted our investigation.
Alan and Anna came out for the second time. After about a few hours in is when there started to be a little activity. Alan and Anna were downstairs in the basement. They had the spirit box on this old tool chest that I got from my dad, and Alan kept trying to ask who was down there.
What's your name?
He was asking if someone was down there to say something to let them know that they're there. After he said one more time, "Give us a sign that you're down here," the box actually spun on top of the tool chest.
We understand that you like to hang out in this corner. Is that true?
After encountering paranormal phenomena in their home, Dan Englum and David Powers called in an investigation team to try to get evidence of any haunting. Their team's findings shocked everyone.
After he said one more time, "Give us a sign that you're down here," the box actually spun on top of the tool chest.
We understand that you like to hang out in this corner. Is that true? You gotta see this. I gotta stop it and back it up. We understand that you like to hang out in this corner. Is that true? I've never seen an object move in that manner. I mean, I could not replicate or debunk it.
We knew something was there, and it had a strong enough energy to be able to manipulate an object that big, and so we knew it was probably serious.
I 100% believe it to be paranormal.
The next room we went into was the guest bedroom.
They had hoped that they'd be able to speak to the old man. They did get him to interact a few times through the spirit box.
We were in there for probably 15 minutes, and the spirit box went from being very quiet to being very noisy, with an old grumpy man talking through it. And he was saying F this and F that and F you and get the F out, and just saying all these obscene, very vulgar things.
I had a meter in my hand that would go off when there was an electromagnetic field near it. There were points where the meter would completely peg, and my arm, I was holding the meter, and my arm would just start shaking uncontrollably. I just had this electrical sensation pulsing through the left side of my body.
And then out of nowhere, it just grabs me by the ankles.
It felt like we were being bullied out of our own home, yeah. It felt like whatever was there was manipulating us.
A spirit, if given the proper energy, some of them can go beyond just moving objects. Some of them could actually physically harm people, because even though their physical body's not here, their emotions still remain the same.
Now that physical things were happening, it felt like we're in more danger.
We were done at that moment. I didn't want to do anything else. I told them we're not doing anything else. They packed up all their equipment and they left.
I felt like whatever was there didn't like us and wanted us out of the house. We didn't stay there again after that. At that point, I felt defeated. I felt completely helpless because we had just gone through all of this and you had the hopes that we had resolved it, and it just wasn't the case.
Having reached their wits' end, Dan and David moved out of their home and stayed with friends.
It was probably a week after all this happened that Dan finally called the medium. I was skeptical about believing whether or not she could fix it.
As soon as we walked in the house, we go downstairs, and the medium said that she could sense a little girl. The little girl kept saying that she was hiding. She hid in the basement, and then she said that she killed him. It was her fault. And the medium asked her, "What's your fault?" And she said, "The fire." She said there was a fire, and she did what her mommy and daddy told her to do. She said that she went downstairs when there was the fire because her parents told her that if anything ever happened, to hide in the basement.
Right away, you just smell fire. It just smelled like fire all around you.
The little girl said that she lived in a farmhouse, and she went in the basement to hide like she was told. And she said she heard her mom and dad calling for her, and they came downstairs. And she said that the stairs collapsed, and it was her fault that they all died down there. The medium felt that it happened probably 100 years ago or more, and it was on the land that this had happened, not necessarily the home that I live in now, just the same location.
She told the little girl that it's not her fault that her parents are gone. And told her that her parents are in the light and she needed to go to the light to find her parents, because that's all the little girl wanted was her parents. And she said that she found them. At the light, she found them. And little girl, you just smell of fire went away. It just got a little bit lighter. And you just felt good because you just felt like you helped.
We made our way back upstairs at that point.
Dan Englum and David Powers were being haunted by the spirit of an old man. They enlisted the help of a medium to cleanse their house of negative energy.
It's cold and dark.
She said the man was very vulgar. He said he was making a lot of profane statements, and he said he didn't approve of us living in his home in sin. And he said he was a good Christian man, and it's not fair that he had to die the way he did while we were living in sin in his home. What had set everything off was when we brought that Bible into the house. And the Bible made him angry because he had always been very religious, and he felt betrayed.
If the person that lived in that house who had died was of the Christian faith, sometimes the anger that somebody has or a spirit has is enough to fuel the energy it needs.
We had discovered that he was saying that he was trying to get into the attic, and the ladder fell out, and he fell down into the basement, onto the basement stairs, and that's where he had died. After we learned how he died, we realized that he was not at peace, and we just wanted him to be able to move on.
The medium helped the spirit come to terms with his death, allowing him to cross over peacefully.
After they just were able to talk to him about his death, they burned sage throughout the house. We could feel his presence there for a little bit longer. Gradually, it did fade. And since that day, there's not been another occurrence of anything from him. He had been there all that time and was trapped and had so much resentment that he couldn't move on.
Ever since the medium came in, things have been perfect.
After they left, the house feels completely different. It felt like homey again, like it used to. Part of me wonders if I'll always be afraid to fall back asleep in the house by myself. Always in the back of your mind, that fear that something's gonna happen again.
I mean, it's just not something that I feel I'll ever get over.
When an entity has an evil intention, the effects on the living can be utterly devastating.
"24, take 3, AB common, soft checks mark."
My name is Tony Rogers. I'm from Lake Simcoe, a little town called Town of Georgina. It's a nice tourist area. People come through, go fishing. Me and my husband, we were looking for a quiet place to live. We just got married a year prior, so we wanted somewhere where we can raise our children and enjoy a nice, quiet town and a place for the kids to grow up and have that small community feeling where everybody knows everybody. I found out that I was pregnant. My husband was working in the city. I used to work at a daycare. I was talking to one of the neighbors, and they were looking for a babysitter, so I just got a babysitting job. And she's a very happy-go-lucky little girl, and she's just a joy, and plus, she was just directly right behind my house. I would take down the laundry to the basement. And then I had this weird feeling that I'm being watched in their basement, and I was like uneasy. So I just dropped the clothes down there and I ran back up, and it's like, you get that eerie feeling.
Tony leaned on her faith and tried to shake the unexplained feeling that she was being watched in her neighbor's house.
One time, it must have been like maybe a couple of weeks into the babysitting, I felt like I needed, like, you know, a nap. The mom actually told me, if you ever get tired, there's a spare room right next to the baby's room. There's a monitor if she wakes up. And then all of a sudden, you feel like you're being watched. I opened my eyes and then couldn't move. And then all of a sudden, these 4 things were like right there, like on 2 on each side of the bed. And they're looking down at me as I'm looking up. But I couldn't scream or move or nothing. and they were like in brown hooded robes. There's no face. It was like darkness. The babies all of a sudden started to fuss in her crib, and all of a sudden I just jolted up. I looked around and there's nothing there. I ran to see the baby and checked her out, and she was fine.
There have been many cases involving what we like to call either incubus or succubus cases, where a person will say that they had a dream that they were surrounded by beings without faces, and they've felt an overwhelming fear come through them and almost paralyzed, where they couldn't move. They knew what was going on, they can see what was going on, but they couldn't do anything about it.
And then the second time it happened, it was more intense.
It was 1992, and Tony Rogers was babysitting at her neighbor's house. She went to take a nap, but realized she was not alone.
And I laid in the bed, and I got the same feeling again. And I saw 5 of them this time. And it was like 2 on each side. One was in front of me. I was trying to scream, couldn't scream, trying to call for help, but no voices coming out. And there's this one at the foot of the bed, and he reaches out his hand, and he had long claw, nails kind of thing. And he went like over my stomach and scratched me. I did the sign of the cross with my tongue, and that's when I was released. You can't explain the fear. Like, it's like terrifying feeling, especially like you can't explain what it was.
When dealing with the demonic, a lot of times, anything that involves a demon is usually never nice. One of the big things that demons prey off of is fear, instilling fear into somebody.
Was it a warning? Was it a sign? Was it to test me for my faith? I have no idea. I just wanted to forget about it, and I just let it go. I'm like freaked out, called my husband, and I said, this thing actually scratched me. I think there's something going on with the baby, like they're out to get my baby or something. He's like, oh, don't be ridiculous, like it's okay. And I'm like, no, I actually have a scratch mark on my stomach, like something scratched me. I can't be here anymore. And he's like, don't worry about it. We have an ultrasound coming up in a couple of days. Everything's gonna be fine. But at that moment I knew, like, there's something that's not right with the baby. I don't know what or why those things were there, but as a pregnant mother, I knew there was something not right. So I told the lady, I said, I can't do this anymore. So we went for the ultrasound, and then they found that there was something wrong with the baby. He was born on April 26th. Complications, his chest cavity was too small for his lungs, and he lived for 13 days, and we had to take him off life support, and I had to say goodbye. I'm this house, and the plans were to have children. Feeling like a failure as a mom, as a wife, as a person. Six months later, I got pregnant again with our second child. And Jesse was born, and it turned out he was a boy, and a healthy boy at that. You can't explain the excitement, like it's beyond happiness being a mom. Things were like, you know, good. Everything at the house was awesome. And, you know, Dad went to work, Mom stayed at home, raised the baby, cleaned the house, you know, good old housewife.
Toni was grateful for her second chance at being a mother, and all the unexplained incidents seemed to stop. Until one night, more than 2 years later.
Jesse was 2.5. We were all sleeping. It was like 2 in the morning. We heard Jesse screaming at the top of his lungs.
Mommy! Mom! Mommy! Mom!
Me and my husband go to the room to check out the situation.
Mommy!
He was screaming that some man was trying to pull him inside the wall. I was scared for my son's well-being, my well-being, and I wanted to get out of that house.
Fearing that the malevolent spirit that had been haunting her was now targeting her son, Toni decided to do some research on her house.
I went to the town and got the city records of who lived in my house. Every 6 months to a year, people were moving in and out, and I've been there the longest. My husband was more skeptical, like he didn't believe. So then I just kept it to myself. I'm not gonna talk about it because I don't want people to think I'm nuts.
Toni tried to dismiss the strange events as coincidence, but any hope that they would stop were soon dashed.
I guess I was about 11:30, 12. Slept into bed. All of a sudden I see out of the closet coming some older woman.
Toni Rogers had been living with evil spirits in her home for years. So far, their intention seemed to be to harm her family.
I guess I was about 11:30, 12. Slept into bed. All of a sudden I see out of the closet coming some older woman. She walks around the bed and she walks over towards on the other side where my husband's sleeping. She's placing these roses on top of his chest. And she spoke to me in Italian. She says, "Non ti preoccupare, figlia mia, tutto va bene," which means, "Don't worry, my child, everything will be fine." And as she did that, my husband started to choke because I felt like I was being choked, or I felt pressure. I didn't understand it, and we just let it go at that. A couple of days later, I go to my mom's house. I was going through my parents' photo album, and I spotted this woman in this picture. She had black hair. She kind of looked like me, actually.
Completely taken aback, Toni saw a photo of the same spirit that had visited her only a few nights previously.
And I asked my mom, "Who is this lady?" And my mom said, "That's Nonna, like that's my mother." I was the only one out of the my family that was born in Canada, and so I've never had the pleasure of meeting any of my grandparents. About a week later, my husband packed his things and walked out on us. That kept playing in my mind, like over and over again. Why would my grandmother come out of the closet with a dozen roses and say that it's gonna be okay? And now it makes sense. She was protecting me or giving me a sign that my husband was planning to leave me, because I was shocked when he decided to walk out.
With the absence of her husband, Tony struggled to make ends meet for herself and her young son.
That's when I decided to put my house up for sale. We put the house on the market. We got an interested buyer, contractor actually. He was planning to tear down and rebuild. He came for his inspection, and I wasn't allowed to be in the house at the time. I said to the contractor, make sure you close the door behind you. And off I went. Come back home after an hour, and I noticed my front door is open.
Hello? Is anybody here? Hello? Hello?
And I look into my son's room, and I notice on his bed, all the stuffed animals on my son's bed were upside down. And I look in the trap door, and it's open, and there's an extension cord with a triple light leading to the crawl space.
Are you here? Hello? Is anyone here? Hello?
The real estate called me and said the contractor is not interested in the house. And I said to her, okay, I'm kind of ticked off because he left the front door open, and he actually left a few tools and his trouble light here, and it's turned on. The contractor said he wants nothing to do with the house, and the lady's crazy for living there and to keep his tools. I was like angry and scared, and like I didn't know what was going on. Like I thought, I don't know, the house was possessed or something. Like I can't explain it. Even the real estate, she said she can't get a hold of the contractor. Like she doesn't know what happened. I feel like it was a warning, and if a spirit didn't want me to live in that house or my son, they would have had me kicked out long before, like as soon as we moved in. I think that they want me to stay. So I just decided that I'm just gonna stay here. And since then, my house has been really quiet. We feel like we're safe there now.